I cannot hear you. So I believe we can start now. Welcome, everyone. Mariana, could you confirm that we are live now?
Yes, we are. Sorry, everyone. We've been having technical difficulties, but hopefully you guys can hear us now and we can start smoothly today.
Great. So welcome to the last day of the 6th Annual Conference on Sustainable Development in Latin America at the Caribbean. We want to thank you all for joining us today for the panel Decarbonization Pathways, Raising Climate Ambition in the AFOLU Sector. We're very happy that we are here with our panelists and with you. Please feel free to use our chat box for letting us know about your field of interest related to climate change and if you're working in the AFOLU sector. We are very interested in knowing more about our audience and how could, like we coordinate between each other for the next challenges that we are going to have in the next years. This panel will focus on on how decisions made by governments, private sector, and the academia today will define the carbon intensity of Latin American and Caribbean economies for the next decades. Our current context demands balancing the need for an urgent and economic recovery and the necessity of moving towards a decarbonized economy to prevent potentially catastrophic climate change impacts. Today, our panelists will share their experience and perspective focusing in the AFOLU sector. Please let me introduce Silvia Llamas. She's a coordinator of operation in Natura Sur, AC, organization that serves as the GCF task force country coordinator in Mexico. She's Mexican and she has a degree in biology and a master's degree in environmental studies and social development. She has more than 15 years of experience in institutional strengthening, planning, implementation, supervision, and coordination of projects, programs, and strategies on conservation and environmental issues. During her career, she has collaborated in initiatives focused on environmental conservation, natural resources management, and rural development. In the last 5 years, she had the opportunity to support and participate in regional and international alliances and strategies linked to the reduction of emissions from deforestation and degradation through low emission rural development and restoration projects. We also have Deissy Martinez Valerion, She's a social science research and brings over 8 years of experience in disseminating science to support decision-making process at all scales. Her work has focused on public policy processes, climate smart agriculture, sustainable finance, social capital, enable frameworks and mechanisms for scaling up. She's also the regional program leader for Latin America in the CGIAR research programs on climate change, agriculture, and food security. Deissy is an economist and international relations professional with a master's degree in rural development. She's also pursuing a PhD in human geography at the University of Copenhagen. Last but not least, we also have Manuel Estrada. He is the AFOLU director at BERRA, responsible for the day-to-day management and evolution of BERRA's work in his space. Manuel is also responsible for the resolving critical issues related to AFOLU, including collaboration with relevant program team staff to respond to stakeholder inquiries and concerns, and supporting nesting of RED projects. Before, Manuel worked on climate issues more than 10 years. He worked for the Ministry of Environment of Mexico for a decade, where he served as a director on climate change and the International Affairs Unit. He participates in UNFCCC negotiations, and over the years he became an independent consulting, carrying on more than 50 projects in around 15 years, working with governments, international organizations, and the private sector. I will love my amazing panelists to introduce themselves. So let's start with Silvia. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Claudia. Well, thanks for the invitation also. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and well, we'll try to share what we do and how we think we contribute. And as Claudia mentioned, my name is Silvia Llamas, and I work in Pronatura Sur, which is a Mexican NGO that coordinates the work of the Governor's Climate and Forest Task Force, the GCF Task Force, which is a subnational collaboration working to protect tropical forests, reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, and promote realistic pathways to forest maintaining rural development. This network has 38 member states and provinces from Brazil, Colombia, Indonesia, Ivory Coast, Mexico, Nigeria, Peru, and Ecuador. And these 38 members represent around the 25% of the tropical forest in the world. In Mexico, where we work, there are 7 member states, which represent around the 66% of the tropical forest in the country. And if you're familiar with Mexico, our member states in Mexico are Jalisco, Oaxaca, Chiapas, Tabasco, Quintana Roo, Campeche, and Yucatan. And well, here in Pronatura, since 2013, we've been working coordinating the work of the GCF task force. And we are an organization, an NGO, a civil society organization, working since 1993. And our strategy has contributed to strengthen natural resource management and biodiversity and conservation mechanisms, as well as the diversification of income opportunities for local communities. For the last 15 years, more or less, we have focused on the forestry sector, developing methodologies for forest management, supporting communities and grassroots organizations, and contributing to improve the value and supply chains. And along these 15 years, we have generated significant experience in capacity building on RED Plus and low emission rural development for governments, decision makers, and the private sector in order to meet their challenges of conservation and sustainable development. So far is what I can share now.
Thanks a lot, Silvia. And it's amazing what you are telling us now, and how like we already see all the connections that we can make through not just the AFOLU sector, but how involve government, right?
Mm-hmm.
So please, Deissy, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I have a couple of slides to share a little bit the work that we do. Please let me know when you are seeing the presentation. And yeah, perfect. So I work for CCAFS. CCAFS is the CGIAR research program on climate change, agriculture, and food security. And its objective is to overcome the threats that climate change makes on agriculture and food security, exploring innovative ways through science to help rural communities to adjust to global changes in climate change. So we are a global research alliance that works closely with the all CGIAR centers around the world in order to generate high quality scientific outputs to support decision-making processes of rural communities and food system stakeholders to face climate change and variability. We do our research through 4 flagships in order to provide solutions at different scales. So the first one is on policies and priorities for climate smart agriculture, and it aims to assess how enabling policy environments and priority setting for targeted investments can support the scaling of interventions contributing to food and nutritional security and poverty reduction under climate change. The second flagship is on climate smart technologies and practices, and here we aim to address the challenge on how to transition to climate smart agriculture at a larger scale in order to enable agricultural systems to be transformed and reoriented to support food security under a changing climate. The third one is on low emissions development, and it aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase carbon sequestration in the agricultural sector. And finally, the climate service and safety nets flagship that works with a range of organizations to support the development of effective climate information and advisory services for farmers and climate-informed safety nets interventions. And we have a cross-cutting flagship on gender, youth, and social inclusion, as well as another flagship on partnerships and scaling up of climate smart agriculture. I will briefly show you an example of what we have achieved in each one of these flagships. This one is on the policies and priorities for CSA. So we have supported the Central American Agricultural Council to formulate and implement the climate smart agriculture strategy for the Zika region. The Zika region gathers 8 countries in Central American and Dominican Republic. And this strategy aims for a more competitive, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food sector in the region. So we put our inputs in terms of the research that we have done in the past and provide the elements to develop this regional strategy. Then in the climate smart technologies and practices, through this approach that we have developed since the beginning on climate smart villages located around the world, we have implemented, but have been able to implement and evaluate climate smart agricultural options so that we can promote sustainable agriculture and improve the rural population's livelihoods in the context of climate variability and change. And here we aim for generating the scientific evidence to show what are the practices that really increase productivity, but in a sustainable manner, the practices that contribute to adaptation and also mitigation to climate change. And in terms of the low emissions development, here's a very interesting example that we have here in Colombia, contributing to a mitigation of enteric and methane emissions by developing diets based on improved tropical forages and promoting sustainable livestock systems and business models, such as Ganso, that is the one that I'm showing here. So Ganso is a comprehensive technical assistance center, which includes support for financial planning and fundraising for a transition from inefficient livestock farms to diversified and sustainable production systems. And these systems combine the intensification of livestock production with forest plantations and agricultural crops, so that we can contribute also to the restoration and conservation of ecosystems. And finally, the Climate Services and Safety Net flagship. This is very interesting approach that we have developed, the local technical agroclimatic committees, mesas técnicas agroclimáticas in Spanish, that are spaces for discussion between different stakeholders on local agroclimatic information. For them, identify what the best options for adaptation to those climatic events will be recommended to farmers and extensionists and technical people on the ground. We have now, we share the information through the local agroclimatic bulletin, and we have now 11 countries with local agroclimatic committees in their countries, with over 40 LTACs involving more than 300 stakeholders participating in the discussions and elaboration of these local agroclimatic bulletins. This was a very quick overview of what we do, and hope it was very useful.
Thanks a lot, Deissy, and congrats for the amazing job that you're doing. In previous meetings, we already kind of knew that the work that you do with, like Manuel and Silvia is something that is going to bring not just alliances, but some real solutions to the problems that we're facing nowadays. With that said, please, Manuel, we'll love to hear about your work and the current challenges that you are facing with the AFOLU sector.
Sorry, it's always I was on mute, but let me share my screen I mean, I don't have many things to show you. Mostly I will just use this to make it more interesting to you. But the thing is, I'm Manuel Estrada. I'm the AFOLU and Red Director of VERRA. VERRA, as you can see here in the slide, is a program that develops and manages standards that are globally applicable and advance action in a number of a range of activities and sectors. No, as you can see here, we have the verified carbon standard, which may be the one that you are most familiar with, since it's the one related to climate change and carbon credits. No, it's the most famous one. Then we also have the jurisdictional nested red standard, which is basically a part of the verified carbon standard, and but this one is focused on the large-scale activities, in programs, in jurisdictional programs that are basically carried out by governments, and also with the participation of nested projects and nested subnational, let's say, or lower-level jurisdictional programs. We also have, as part of VERRA, the California Offset Project Registry, and the Climate Community and Biodiversity Standard, which is normally used together with the BCS to ensure that the projects, or not to ensure, but to certify that the projects are at the same time achieving mitigation benefits and other wider environmental benefits and social benefits too. And finally, we have the sustainable, well, not finally, related to the land use sector, we have the Sustainable Development Verified Impact Standard, the SDVista, and we also have the initiative for climate action, transparency, land scale, and the 3R, which is based on the reduction of plastics. So, well, very quickly, VERRA was founded in 2010 by the International Emissions Trading Association, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and the World Economic Forum. And we are a non-profit NGO with headquarters in DC, in Washington, DC, although many of us are spread across the globe. No, we have people in Chile and in Spain, in Canada, of course, in the US, in South Africa, and so on. No? What I can tell you about, specifically about the BCS program, which, as I was telling you, is the one focused on projects, no? On carbon mitigation projects. No, we have about 2,000 projects already registered. I mean, over time, which generate about 250 million BCUs in 70 countries, and out of these almost 2,000 projects, around 170 are AFOLU projects, and most of these are RED projects. No, we also have some projects on improved forest management, some afforestation, reforestation, revegetation projects, and some agriculture and land management projects. No, but the main, say, the leading project type in BCS are RED projects. No, and we're expecting this to even increase once we, I mean, the jurisdictional nested RED requirements are published next week. I mean, the update, because that's this program was originally published in 2012 and has not been revamped. And well, the BCS is the standard leader in the AFOLU space, no? And this is because of a number of innovations that it has included over the years, no? For instance, the use of a buffer mechanism, the methodologies for leakage accounting, and enabling also the generation of methodologies for RED accounting, no? Yeah, I mean, I can show you, let me see, some of the, yeah, more or less. Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, but very quickly, no, to give you an idea on how these projects and the credits related to the AFOLU sector have evolved over time. As you can see here, no, since 2009, the AFOLU sector, or the AFOLU related carbon credits have increased dramatically from 2016 to now. No, the other sectors were higher before 2016, but since 2016, basically, and mostly because of RED, this sector or this type of activities have basically left the market. No, you can also see here the same here, no, where you can see that the forestry and land use projects have generated in 2017, 2018 a value of about $171 million, while, for instance, renewable energy projects generate only 40, and this was the second place. No, so basically, forestry and land use, and particularly RED, have led the space for some time now, and are expected to do so in the future. No, we have a number of reasons to believe that the demand is going to increase. I mean, we have seen it increasing these few years for a number of reasons. But I think this is something I would like to discuss with you later during our exchanges. So thank you, Claudia.
No, thanks to you, Manuel. And as you mentioned, this is not just an important topic, but something that is going to kind of shape what, you know, like countries are going to be doing in the next years, especially with the second round of NDCs that everybody is preparing, or some, you know, like Latin American and Caribbean countries already submit to the UNFCCC. Something that we would like to discuss in this first round at the panel with all of you will be what are going to be the challenge and opportunities to increase climate ambition from the AFOLU sector. And I feel, Manuel, that you could start this like getting ready for, you know, like for countries to step up and start, you know, like taking an action. Then we will go back to Silvia and Deissy, but why don't you take this first one? I think you're in mute, Manuel.
Yes, always. Yeah, then let me show you this couple of slides that I have prepared here for you, because you will find some interesting data here. No, this one. No, I mean, as you know, lately there has been a lot of expectation on the growth of the carbon market. This is has been particularly due to the fact that on the one hand, you have a lot of companies, big companies, making pledges of net zero emissions in the coming decades, no, from here to 2030, 2050. No? And then there are these negotiations on Article 6 in the UNFCCC. This Article 6 of the Paris Agreement basically relates to the establishment of carbon mechanisms, market mechanisms in the agreement, and have been under discussion for the last, I don't know, maybe 4 years, since 2000, not even more, for the last 6 years, no? Considering that the Paris Agreement entered into force in 2015. And even before that, these negotiations were already undergoing. No, but the thing is, it is expected that by the next COP, these market mechanisms will be, or the rules for these market mechanisms will be put in place. And with that, there could be recognition of voluntary markets and voluntary schemes that could merge or give an entrance for voluntary or for recognized voluntary carbon projects or credits in the regulated markets. So one, let's say that the first signal of this trend, or what could happen with the Article 6 mechanisms, has been provided by CORSIA. No? CORSIA is the market mechanism of the aviation industry. No? So CORSIA recently, I mean, the last couple of years, has recognized a number of standard programs, amongst them VERRA, which means that companies that want to reduce, I mean, airlines that want to reduce their emissions using offsets may use credits certified by VERRA or using VERRA, because they're certified by third actors, not by auditors. But these projects, including RED projects, particularly those incorporated into jurisdictional programs, the credits that they produce may be used to compensate the emissions, to offset the emissions of the aviation sector. No? So that's one interesting happening that's taken place lately. No? Then, as you can see here, no, about the expectation. I mean, in 2020, some estimates show that the voluntary market was, I mean, total, not only the AFOLU sector, was worth about 95 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, no? Which was already a lot, an important increase from 2017. It was almost twice as much as 2017, no? But what some studies, I mean, McKinsey has produced some figures lately, and this has shown that the demand for carbon credits could increase by 15% or more by 2030, and even by 100 times by 2050. No, so this could lead to an annual demand of carbon credits from 1.5 to 2 gigatons in 2030, and between 7 and 13 gigatons in 2050. No? So this would lead to a market worth $50 billion in 2030. No? So, no, but the thing is, I mean, these are let's say the technical estimates. No, when you see the reality of the market, there are many things that need to happen for this demand to be covered, no? Or to be met, because right now, the voluntary market has many things that have to be scaled up and improved. No? One of them is improving the methodologies. No? As you may know, many methodologies, particularly related to RED, have been questioned lately, in part because, to be honest, in part because of people are not used to I mean, are not familiar with these methodologies. So, for instance, one common mistake is thinking that once you have a RED project, you should expect that no deforestation should happen in the project area. No, and if some deforestation appears there, then it means that the project has failed. But the thing is, it doesn't work like that. No, in the case of projects, when you have, I mean, the idea is that you will establish a project in an area where you have a high deforestation rate, or you expect that a high deforestation rate will appear in the next years. No, but that doesn't mean that the area has shown deforestation, high deforestation rates in the past, because if that had happened, then you wouldn't have a forest anymore. No? So the problem with RED is that you have to prognosticate where deforestation is going to happen. So that makes the RED methodologies particularly difficult. No? So, but the thing is, as I was telling you, the idea is to find areas that are expected to become at risk of deforestation because, the forest frontier is nearing the project area, or because most likely deforestation is appearing around the project area or even within the project area. No? So what you do with these methodologies is try to project what is going to happen in the project area. No? And normally this leads to a baseline that implies the business as usual. No, what would happen if the project didn't take place? No, so once a project is established, you see the area and you see deforestation is not that the project is failing, because you don't have to compare the area against what the area was 10 years ago or 5 years ago before the project started. You have to compare the area against what the area would be without the project now, no, in the same point in time, and that's where things get complicated. No, but that, I mean, just like parentheses. No, but the thing is, there are there's some work to do regarding methodologies. We are already working on that by applying these jurisdictional programs and nesting or incorporating projects into these jurisdictional baselines and jurisdictional programs. Then there is also the issue that in many cases, project developers do not know if they are going to find enough demand and high enough prices to make the projects worthwhile. No, so this difficulty to foresee what the future is going to be regarding prices and demand for project developers makes the offer shrink. No? So that's another issue that has to be taken into account. Then you have the part of the costs. No? You have costs related to the project development, which includes a lot of consultancy time. It includes paying for a validation, an auditor that would validate that your project is complying with the methodology and with the standard that you're using. And then, well, all of the costs related to project monitoring. No? So in that sense, we have to find ways of making this more cost-effective. No? And also to use the latest technologies to improve monitoring and lower the cost of monitoring, which is also important. No? Then we also have on the part of the buyers, no? That in many cases they do not know either the standards or the projects or the local realities. No, so for them it's also difficult to invest without having a clear idea on what, I mean, if the credits are going, I mean, if the project is going to succeed, if the project is good, it's credible, and so on, no? And also that they don't know how much they are going to pay for the credits, no? They have the more or less the same situation as the producers of those credits, no? So these are the things, I mean, from the point of view of the standards and the voluntary carbon market, these are some of the issues that have to be tackled in the coming years to allow for this scaling up of the markets to be able to produce these volumes of emissions reductions that are going to be or are expected to be demanded by either governments, companies, and so on, no, or NGOs and even individuals, no? So, and airlines, of course. This is more or less what I could tell you. And how to go into your question, Claudia, about how to promoting ambition. I think, I mean, obviously, you know, from the point of view of the market, of the voluntary markets, and in general, from the market, is that one of the key ways of increasing ambition is to lower cost of reducing emissions, no? And that's where we see the value of having these standard programs and of having a market, no? At the same time, again, no, it is also critical to create awareness among the public and among the companies, particularly the large polluters, about the need to reduce emissions and not only use offsets. No, I'm not saying that you should buy everything and do nothing. No, more like on the contrary. No? Companies should start doing their share, no, and whatever they can do now that is feasible technically and economically, and then what they cannot reduce by themselves, then use the markets. No, and the same could apply to governments. No, in the end. The thing is that with governments is more complicated because normally the governments have less resources and capacity to implement actions or to buy credits. You know? And in some cases, it's not even fair to ask them to do so. No? In that sense, I think it's also you will hear many times in the UNFCCC negotiations that it's important for those countries with more capacities to lead the way and show more or less how this can be done. And you have some good examples of that. So, and some others not so good. So, yeah, that's from my part. And obviously, if you have any questions, I would be glad to respond to that.
No, thanks a lot, Manuel. I think that this building, like assembling different stakeholders, not just view, but commitments, give us a lot of not just questions to answer, but also give us some roles to develop. As you mentioned, Article 6 is going to be well implemented at some point by governments, and they need for sure the support of the private sector, and who better to a standard to just kind of set those rules or those recommendations. Why don't we go to Silvia and discuss a little about the role of the governments and the work that you're doing, Silvia?
Sure, Claudia. Well, as I mentioned, we work with national governments, that mean state governments in Mexico, and talking about or seeing the challenges and opportunities to increase climate ambition. We had just finished an analysis of the updated NDC document for Mexico. And well, I think we all have clear that increasing the forest area is considered one of the elements to achieve neutrality. And in other words, to achieve zero net emissions is not enough to reduce deforestation, but rather increase restoration and reforestation to improve carbon sinks. So looking at this scenario, what we can see at the updated version of the NDC for Mexico, it doesn't recognize formally that sustainable forest management is a way to contribute both to mitigate and adaptate, for mitigation and adaptation. So although the importance of managing and conserving forests is mentioned in different sections of this NDC update document, there is not explicit mention of actions aimed at promoting and strengthening sustainable forest management. And it's clear it is a big window to increase climate ambition. Therefore, one way to increase the ambition of the Mexico national commitment to climate change in the forestry sector is to establish a goal of reducing gross deforestation or increasing the forest area in the country. An intermediate option would be to establish zones in which the objective is to avoid the gross loss of forest cover, which would allow some flexibility in the management of the territory to promote diverse productive and land uses activities compatible with the conservation of forest. And well, for the last 10 years, national governments in Mexico have been working to strengthen and build their RED Plus strategies and low emission rural development strategies. So state governments are kind of ready or on the way to really contribute to increase the climate ambition by recognizing formally that the forest element and managing forest and having these strategies included in the NDC would completely support this ambition that we are looking for that comes from the AFOLU sector. So some opportunities to strengthen this role, the role of the AFOLU sector and RED Plus in this second round of the NDC. Well, we have identified some actions that the Mexican government and civil society organizations could take to strengthen the ambition and execution of these commitments. And we have identified some strategies that can seem kind of repetitive, but unless we take them to the formal scenario of the NDC and the ambition from the country, we won't have the results we need and the ambition we need. So some opportunities and that we have seen is ensuring that sustainable forest management is included as a strategy for mitigation and adaptation to climate change, since it also offers multiple social and economical and environmental benefits for the communities. And well, by ensuring the coordination also of the environmental sector and the agricultural and livestock sector, that's let's say a strategy that we've been pushing for a very long time, but we haven't gotten there, you know, like to the point of this coordination getting the results we need. So we need to ensure this coordination of both sectors in order to design and implement policies that favor the integrated management of the territory to guide it towards a sustainable development approach. And although this is an issue that has been promoted for quite a long time in Mexico, well, we need to bring these results so we can really get the level of ambition we are looking for. And well, the results of this coordination should be reflected in the design and execution of innovative public policies, as well as on the inclusion of specific criteria for the operation of public budgets that guarantee the conservation of ecosystems. That means we can be working together, coordinated, but if we don't see the results on the execution of budgets, that means having more money for the forest sector and more money to integrate public policies from the agricultural livestock sector and the forest sector, then we don't have the impact we need to get. So that's something that's an opportunity, but also a challenge we have identified. And well, as Manuel had mentioned in his intervention, promoting emission compensation through carbon forestry projects, it's a huge opportunity. And even if in Mexico we have more than 10 years working and preparing the country, but not only the country, the subnational governments to get into those carbon projects, carbon forestry projects, there are not many experiences in Mexico yet. So that's a huge opportunity, and we need to strengthen this strategy. As Manuel has mentioned, there has to be a lot of certainty of how these mechanisms are developed and how they are implemented. So the country needs to really embrace these strategies so we can get more funding and technical support in order to have jurisdictions to get into this type of projects. So for sure, carbon forestry projects are a huge opportunity. But also we've been noticing that improving communication to the general public, it's a good chance also to increase ambition, since we need to communicate that actions and achievements in forest conservation and the reversal of deforestation trends, it's something we need to work together. We need to emphasize that ecosystem services are being lost because of losing forest areas and reducing forest areas. So we need to improve communication with the population of the benefits of ecosystem restoration related to the ecosystem services. In that way, we will change a lot of the ways we've been acting. We've been getting related to the private sector and with the things we consume as a population. And as I mentioned, even if these actions seem kind of repetitive or old, the need to incorporate them as explicit and formal elements in the national NDC is what would make the difference for achieving increased ambition. This would allow the efforts and work that has been carried out for several years linked to AFOLU and RED+ to accelerate progress toward meeting climate goals, but also to attract economic and technical resources that would allow strengthening the work of the sector itself. So all the work we are doing with the subnational governments is directed to strengthen their capacities, but also to alienate with the national government. And as we have analyzed the complete scenario of the national NDC, this year we will be analyzing the state-by-state scenario and opportunity to have a clear vision of numbers, like specific numbers and specific strategies that can contribute to achieve the goals, but also to have an opportunity to increase ambition. So the work between the national and the state governments might sound like something easy or logical, but it's not that easy. You know, it's like the states have their own strategies, the national government has its own strategies. So getting together, it's a challenge, but it's like the opportunity to get to the results we desire.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Silvia. And I think that one of the things that really resonated with me was like how adaptation is going to be included excluded, and what is the importance of mixing, like mitigation and adaptation. Maybe Deissy, you can develop a little more the idea, because we know you have a lot of experience on that field.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia. And yeah, I would like to focus on the opportunities that we have, and how adaptation is really helping to, I don't know if you see my screen now, but yeah. I would like to show how we have incorporated these, and the role of adaptation in all this, the economic recovery and decarbonization of the economy. And this transformation initiative, Transforming Food Systems Under a Changing Climate initiative, is an initiative that we developed 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, across with over 100 partners, to identify pathways for transforming food systems in a changing climate. And what we did was basically to identify 11 actions that would be needed to transform food systems, and not only looking at the mitigation side, but also the adaptation one, and those cross-cutting aspects that you always need to consider now when you are addressing these big challenges. And those 11 actions contribute to both to promote the economic recovery, but also to promote the decarbonized economy, to prevent potentially catastrophic climate change impacts. So I'm going to summarize. I'm not going to go into detail of each action, but you are, of course, invited to visit the website and know a bit more and explore further. But these 11 actions have been clustered in 4 key areas, action areas. The first one, rerouting farming and rural livelihoods to new trajectories, which are actions that can promote decarbonized economy. So you can see there, ensure zero agricultural land expansion, and so other actions that can contribute to that goal. Then the second area is de-risking livelihoods, farms, and value chains that can also contribute to economic recovery. And that you will see that is adaptation focused, resilience, the understanding whether the key resilience that we will need to, resilient actions that we will need to address. And then you have value change approach, but also the livelihoods one. So those are key elements that you will have incorporated into the resilience aspects. The third action area is reducing emissions through diets and value chains, which directly contribute to promote decarbonized economy. So that's more related to the mitigation side, and we are understanding that are important. It is very important to achieve to healthy and sustainable diets, which directly put us into understanding our role as consumers also. And finally, the fourth action area that contributes to the economic recovery, very straightforward, is the realigning policies, finance, support to social movements, and innovation. And I think here in the innovation side, as research organizations, as academic institutions, we have a really essential role to make, so that the knowledge that we generate really aim to transform the way we do our consumption choices, how we can contribute to transform really the food systems that are essential into the whole AFOLU sector when you take a look at it as a whole. So yeah, I would like to leave it at that. Thank you, Claudia.
Thanks a lot, Deissy, and thanks to all of you, especially to our audience that already makes some questions. So the first one is going to go for Manuel. And the question is, do project developers not get into long-term emission reductions purchase agreement in order to have clarity on the price per ton? So Manuel, please give us your thoughts about this, this question.
Could you please repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. Do
Javier?
project developers, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Hmm.
Do project developers not get into long-term emissions reductions purchase agreement in order to have clarity on the price per ton?
Yes, the thing is, I mean, where the uncertainty comes is before they sign the AirPass, no? These purchase agreements. The thing is, when you develop a project, you don't know by the time it reduces emissions, what the price is going to be, or if there's going to be any demand. As you could see in the graph I showed you before, I mean, the market hasn't been increasing constantly since the start of the voluntary carbon market, no? So the prices are not so easy to foresee. You can always enter, for instance, into an agreement with a buyer for futures. No, you can sell futures like, okay, if you give me some money to start my project or support the development of my project, I'm going to give you, I'm going to sell to you these emission reductions, the first emission reductions that the project develops, produces at an agreed price. No, normally those prices are also very reduced because, of course, you're getting the money beforehand. No, but the problem is, I mean, before you enter into these negotiations, because one, most of the prices are really never known. I mean, these are private agreements that have even confidentiality clauses. So knowing about the prices is tricky. No, when you see prices being reported in some of these annual documents, annual reports produced, for instance, by the ecosystem marketplace, those come from project developers or from buyers that have been willing to share this information, but it's only a part of the actual figures that are traded in the market. No, so I mean, as a project proponent, as a project developer, you really, I mean, you can have an idea, but it's very in the variation between prices is very wide. No, you can have reductions from at I don't know, less than $1 per ton of CO2, and in other place to have $20 or $30 paid per ton. So because also depends in a number of other factors, not going from the volume of emission reductions that you're selling, also from the associated co-benefits and the credibility of the project, or who's or not the credibility, but the robustness, let's say, of the project. No, that you know that, for instance, the NGO that is participating in it or is leading it is a credible and well-known NGO, and so on. No, is the credibility of the project proponent. So yes, once you enter into the ERPA, you more or less have a certainty about the price. But before that, and when you have to negotiate this emission reduction purchase agreement, it's when you don't have this information. No? So it's difficult for you to negotiate as project developer.
You're so right, Manuel. It's sometimes it feels like a gambling time in our lives. Still, maybe something to close the panel and that I really want to ask Silvia is that if you could develop a little, like, tell us a little more about not just the role of the governments, but what kind of partnership they can deliver in order to strain the AFOLU sector and maybe the role of RED on the second rounds for the NDC, Silvia.
Well, Claudia, I think the private sector, it's a partner that has been identified. It's a key partner, and that it's not an actor that it's easy to follow or to work from the different perspectives in Latin America, let's say. Like the private sector has a very clear role in all this scenario in Brazil, for example, but in Mexico it gets more complicated since, well, you know, forests in Mexico are completely full of people, which have productive activities that are a very small scale. So let's say that the impact of very small scale activities is huge, but it's difficult to follow as a supply chain or as a value chain element, since it's not a big scale strategy, as in Brazil, for example, that it's big scale, and then the private sector it's recognized in the different parts of the supply chain, let's say. So in Mexico, that's complicated, and that complicates the relationship between the private sector and the governments and the communities. So private sector, for sure, it's a key element, as we were, as Deissy was mentioning, this role of consumers we have. It's completely linked to these opportunities of increasing ambitions and results. So the population, it's completely immersed in all this dynamic. And as consumers, well, the private sector and the markets keep getting a big role to play in all this scenario. So I guess the private sector, it's one of a key elements and partnership for governments. And well, you mentioned RED as an opportunity, and I guess that's well, I have mentioned that the forest sector, it's a huge opportunity to increase ambition. And at least in Mexico, RED Plus has been a line that has been guiding all the efforts we've been building for the forest sector. So it plays a huge role, but now we need to jump into all these financial mechanisms for reducing deforestation, as the ones Manuel has been sharing. So we need to jump from the early actions to prepare the states and the country to now start negotiating and having opportunities and looking for opportunities related to financial mechanisms to start paying for results of all the actions that are being implemented and all the strategies the states have been building and now getting to implement. So I think RED, it's a good opportunity to present results to reduce deforestation and degradation, but also to formalize this mechanism into the goals and ambition of the country. So at least in Mexico, RED has been a key element, and now we have a challenge with the new administration, like kind of evaluating if RED still being an opportunity, or how emissions from deforestation and forest degradation have to be financed. So I think RED has a long history here and has a good opportunity to keep being an important element in the country.
No, thanks a lot, Silvia, Deissy, Manuel. this has been amazing to not just share ideas, but have a clear view of what is coming and the opportunities that we have. For sure, there are challenges. For sure, there are things that we need to do, but it's time to take action. And I think this panel just delivered those clear ideas on how to do it and how to be ready for what is coming. I will leave you all with Mariana that have some final announcements to do, but thanks a lot to the audience and to the panelists. It has been great to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming. Just a quick reminder to join another session that will be occurring at 12 p.m. at noon. We will be talking about urban futures. So remember to join. You should have the access link in your emails. Thank you so much.